And we're back. Oh my goodness, it feels like it's been for a long time since we've last been together in a webcast. And now that we're all back, we're refreshed from the spring break that we all had a chance to relax and to enjoy. I hope now we can get back to learning about ancient Rome, and that will be the focus for the next 4 or 5 weeks or so, and it will take us into May. So, looking forward to spending this time with you guys. Today we're going to talk about the geography and the rise of Rome and how it rose. So, let us discuss. Okay, so Roman origins. So, the Romans conquered many places that we have already studied, like Egypt and Greece. The Romans came from a city in modern Italy called Rome. It's located right around here. And as you can see on the map, it looks like Italy looks like this high boot. So as you can see, you have this boot-looking thing, and then Sicily is the football. So physical features: Italy has two mountain ranges. You have the Alps in the north. You have the Apennines, which is more centered in Italy. Italy is made up of mostly mountains and hills. However, these mountains are different from Greece's. Now, Greece mountains, they have sharp tops to them, meaning that they're peaked. And with a peaked mountain, you can't really live on peaked mountains. So the Greeks had to find land that was flat. However, these mountains here, they are not peaked, but they actually kind of plateau. So on the top, there's a huge flat piece of land that people can actually live on, they can farm on, etc. So it is different from Greece in that the people in Italy and these Romans, they're actually going to live on the mountains. They're actually going to build their cities, especially Rome, on mountains. And Rome's built, I believe, on seven. So the climate of Italy is very similar to what we have in SoCal. It's dry in the summer. It's mild with mild rainy winters. The climate allows people to grow a variety of crops just like we can do here, and a plentiful food supply was key factor in Rome's early growth. So you have to be in a place where getting food is easy. Because if getting food is easy, then you can focus on other things. But if it's hard to grow food where you live, then that's always going to have to be a priority, is where am I going to get my next food? And if you're thinking about how am I going to eat again, um, you're not going to be able to delve into other things like, governments and hobbies, because you're going to be in survival mode, always trying to feed yourself. So Italy has a climate like Southern California that allows a variety of crops to be grown, like grapes, lemons, apples, broccoli, as you can see over here. So Rome's legendary origins. Okay, we don't have any record about how Rome really came about. We do know that the leaders of Rome wanted to connect Rome's history to a glorious past. So there are stories that are told, and these turn to be legends now, about great hero kings who built this city. One of them, okay, is we have, if you remember the story of the Iliad, where it has the Greeks come against the Trojans, and they built the Trojan horse, as I put here. They build this huge horse and they bring it within their walls, and the Greeks are hiding, and they come out and they just take everybody out. Well, here Rome has kind of tied their lineage to that story. Aeneas is an individual who fled with his dad and settled in Italy. So he fled from Troy when the Greeks destroy it finally in the Iliad. And this person, according to Greek mythology, which is most likely made up because they're trying to connect themselves to a glorious past. So there's Aeneas and his dad. They settle in Italy. These were, I believe, the kings of Troy at that point. Then this legend is told in the Aeneid. I think it's Aeneid. An epic poem written by Virgil around 20 BC. So the story continues. You have two brothers who are twins who descend from Aeneas. They're put in a basket in the Tiber River. The the brothers were saved and raised by a wolf, hence that's why there's a wolf here. You have two brothers who are very young. When they grew up, the brothers decide to build a massive city where the wolf raised them, and then Romulus, who's one of the brothers, eventually kills his brother Remus. And the story goes that Remus made fun of Romulus because he built a wall for his city, and Romulus got upset and killed him. That's the story. So, Rome's early kings, you have Romulus, who is said to take the throne in 735 BC. Roman records list 7 kings that ruled the city. So we have records of 7 kings who ruled Rome in these early days. Okay? The last 3 kings, according to records and our archaeological evidence, says that the last 3 kings of Rome were not Roman, but Etruscan. So, interesting. So we have Romans and we have Etruscan, and we have a blending of cultures that happens in Rome. So Etruscan kings brought Greek culture to Rome, like temple and sewer systems. These are the people who start bringing um, the Greek ideas from to Rome. And this is where it all starts shifting for Romans. Now they're going to become extremely civilized because they're going to borrow from the Greek culture that the Etruscans also borrowed from originally. So the last Roman king was said to be cruel and was overthrown in 509 BC. So just like Athens, just like most of Greece, people started off with a king. But around 509 BC, they had a terrible king, a king that was awful to the people, and Rome is now going to decide on a new government, something that will be less, will allow people to not, will not allow people to abuse the power. So here are some vocabulary words I want you to get used to. One is republic, people elected leaders to govern them. Dictators, rulers with almost absolute power. Plebeians are common people that could not run for election. And patricians are powerful nobles that could be elected to an office. So in the early republic, in 509 BC, the Romans created a republic. After officials were elected, they stayed in power for 1 year. So I want to make this clear. So in their republic, they would vote on who would be the leader. That official was the elected leader and stayed in power for 1 year. Why did they do this? Because it kept people from gaining too much power. Again, they were not too happy with what had happened with the last king. The king abused their power, so the Romans got very wise in that if they could just limit the power of one person, then they can limit the abuse of power. However, in the early republic, only the wealthy people could be elected. So challenges from outside. So Rome is now a republic. They're growing. They're strong. People have their own identity, they're individuals. Um, but Rome now has to prove themselves, so they're going to fight in wars for about 50 years. Many lives and properties will be destroyed. During times of war, the Romans chose dictators. Dictators had power for 6 months and then gave it up. Now, some people say that it was longer than 6 months, maybe it was a year, but one thing you just need to know that dictators, they had power, some would say it was absolute power, for a limited amount of time only. So, I want to tell you a story about Cincinnatus. So, Cincinnatus is one of Rome's famous dictators. He was chosen by the people, he defended Rome from its enemies, and afterwards he gave up his power and went back to farming. That's the short version. Let me give you a little more understanding on this. So Cincinnatus, he was a brilliant statistician. He was good at strategy, especially war strategy, and he was asked by the people of Rome to be the dictator. Remember, the dictator has absolute power or almost absolute power for a specimen, we'll say 6 months, okay, for a specified amount of time. So for 6 months. So Cincinnatus here is asked by the people to defend them. He's a simple farmer, but he puts down the plow and he picks up the sword and he defends them. He defends them so well that he destroys their enemies in less than the time that he had as a dictator. So after he destroyed the enemies, he could have enjoyed life for an extra couple of months because again, he's a dictator for this amount of time. Okay, after the time's over, you don't have the power anymore. But he could have maintained that power for however long he was going to have it. But instead, he gave it up. He did his job, he did his civil duty, and then he went back to farming. He didn't crave power. And so Cincinnatus is highly praised because it's one, he didn't crave power, and two, he rose to the challenge of defending his country like every good civil citizen should do. Now, challenges within Rome. Roman society was divided into two groups. You have the plebeians, who were the lower class, basically, and the patricians, who were upper. The plebeians wanted more say in the government. The plebeians said, look, just because of our lower status doesn't mean that we shouldn't be involved in a government that we all enjoy. So they threatened to start their own government. If they had done this, then the patricians would have lost power, and the patricians were the nobles. So the patricians kind of folded and said, okay, fine, you can be in our government, because again, the plebeians start their own government. Now Rome is weakened, and there's going to be a vie for power between the two groups. So the patricians conceded the point that they should be in government. The patricians, however, feared Rome would fall apart if the two groups could not get along. So they worked really hard to try to change the government and to include the plebeians as well. And that's kind of where it ends, where we're going to end today's lesson. So just remember that the patricians and the plebeians are two groups of people. They don't really like each other, but the patricians feared that their power would be usurped. And if it would be usurped, then that would be a major problem in that the nobles would lose power to the plebeians, and there would be a war, maybe not a real war, but definitely a conflict within Rome as to who should be allowed in government. So the patricians allow the plebeians to be involved. That means lower class people can now be in government, and that's going to have some significant changes in the policies of Rome. And that's it. So guys, go ahead and write your one-page summary. And if you have any questions, of course, talk to me at school. And I look forward to hearing from you on a Monday when the summary is due and hearing your deep insights. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.